Hello, my name is Shulamit, and I'm the creator of the MediSounds process. Every Sunday at noon, I host a Zoom meeting for us to explore wisdom teachings and experience the healing power of MediSounds. These meetings are made possible by generous donors. Please help this site thrive by liking and subscribing, and please join our newsletter at greatoctave.com to receive notices of our events. Welcome and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're coming from. Today, we're in the midst, as you already know, we've been talking about for some time, some pretty dramatic changes in our society and in our technology. And at the moment, a cry is being raised by the people who are most connected with artificial intelligence that this particular creature that we're creating, this Frankenstein, if you will, has the potential to basically eradicate us. It will be a superior intelligence. It will solve an incredible amounts of problems, but it will also, because it learns by itself and can improve itself and maybe even communicate with other artificial intelligences, be in a position to not only rule the world, but reduce our position in the world from alpha to basically becoming irrelevant. I can't predict the future, except that I know that these changes, however they turn out ultimately, and if we can at least try to be wise and control this beast that we're creating, we still have to face the fact that life, as we describe it to ourselves through our stories over thousands of years, is not going to be the same. So one of the questions that arises in my mind, and I think it's important for each of us to examine it, because we are going to be faced with how we participate or how we allow this machine into our lives. I'm not in Silicon Valley, so I don't have control over what's happening. But I do believe there is a place for us if we can pay some attention. What do you really believe in? What are your values? What kind of religious or theological belief or spiritual belief do you have? And this is actually something that you might answer rather readily, but I'm not so sure that if you examine it closely, that there might be nuances that you should investigate. Do you, for example, believe in a creator, in a single creator that created the world and watches over each of our individual lives and knows exactly what we're doing all the time and can be generous, but also can be incredibly, almost irrationally punitive, kind of like the story of Job, right? And that we pray to this divinity when we want protection or help in solving problems that we can't solve. For example, a terrible illness or extreme poverty, or even not coming from that place, but from a place of, I want to have more money, I want to have more cars, I want to have more goods, and it could come from that place too. But there's a prayer to a divinity. Or are you the kind of person who pays lip service? I mean, you may belong, although less and less people are doing this, but you may belong to a church or synagogue or mosque or so on, and you may be going there, and you may be doing the things that other people do in those places, but in fact, you're not much of a believer. You're there maybe for insurance, sort of Pascal's gamble. You don't know whether there's a God, but since you don't know, you're going to take a bet that maybe there is and therefore behave appropriately. Or you're there for business reasons, community reasons, to be part of something, to be part of a group, to go along, to get along. I mean, there are a lot of reasons. Or perhaps you're an atheist and you don't believe that there's anything beyond what you can touch and see, and everything is more or less random. And when you die, that's it. And there's no arbiter in the afterlife who determines your guilt or your innocence or whatever, or your salvation. I mean, that's another possibility. And of course, there are all sorts of variations on that. Of course, there are agnostics who say they don't know if God exists or not, There are animists, people who believe that every living thing, every living object, or I should say everything is living and alive and has an essence and a soul, if you will. I mean, the indigenous people thanked the animals that they lived off of, for sustenance. They spoke to the trees and the plants. And this is not, you may think it's silly and ridiculous, but in fact, indigenous people were able to identify all kinds of healing plants from their native environments, which subsequently some of the pharmaceutical companies examined and took the chemical compositions to make some of our drugs. So, instead of being so high and mighty, it might be nice to examine all these belief systems that have existed throughout history. So why does this matter? Well, I think it matters because it matters basically it matters. But it matters also because we're entering into this time of rapid change. And to know your own values is going to matter a great deal, and how well you negotiate the ups and downs of this transition. Today, the Times read an article about how people are turning to AI as almost pastors, to answer, or even addressing AI as God, as the intermediary to God, bringing their questions, their hopes, their prayers, and so forth. And there are people who are saying that in the not too distant future, people will be worshiping AI because AI can solve problems, practical problems of health and wealth and so on. But that goes along with the concept that there is no spirit, there is no soul to anything. And that's just something to be examined. I'm not a person who can tell you the way it is. I only have my own belief system. And there are people, some of them very, very thoughtful, who have felt or thought that the universe is really, nature is what brings everything. Nature, indifferent nature. Nature really is indifferent to us. If a big storm comes and knocks down our house, it's not personal. You're just part of the landscape if you get swept away, That everything is naturally arising throughout the entire universe, and that nature, in a sense, is God. But whatever it is, I know that I have been thinking a lot about this because AI does bring in a different world, a completely materialistic world in which data reigns supreme and an intelligence far superior to our own can assemble this data. And it appears, really do become irrelevant in this landscape. It's possible we'll be treated the way we treat chickens or cows, an inferior intelligence to be herded. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about it and examining my own belief system. I can't conceive of a world without soul, without spirit. I can't. Maybe it's my limitation, but I can't conceive of that. I do believe in an organizing divine principle. how that principle exhibits itself in my mind and in the mind of others can be discussed, but I do believe there's an order. There's a natural order, and we know that. There are laws of gravity. There are things that the world consists of, the universe consists of. There are mathematical laws. There's a system, so to speak. And there's even a system, apparently, I don't know if a system is the right word, of ethics, because you can see it even in the animal kingdom, that there can be a kind of kindness extended to creatures of their own species. I don't know about cross species, but creatures of their own species. Providing food to an animal who can't get their own food, that kind of thing, sharing. There are natural laws of fairness that even children who are maybe not instructed by their parents have a sense of. So there's also there's all these systems that we haven't examined. We don't know where they come from and why they're here. We don't know whether we're here karmically because we've had many lives before and we keep straightening out things as we come along. I mean, that has a very nice explanatory value. Or whether we just disappear and we're nothing. But you have to know what you believe. I'm not saying you have to know whether it's right. And the reason you have to know is because we are all going to be challenged in the way that we live going forward. There are going to be systems that tell us that life is different than we thought it was. And we have to know what we think and what we believe. For example, if you're raising children now, it's very clear from the administrative level of this country that fair play and good sportsmanship is not valued. But still, I would assume that many parents and coaches and referees and so forth attempt to instruct their children in the concepts of fairness and grace and defeat and so forth. These are things that we cultivated on the playing field, but have also been part of our literature from time immemorial. We're entering into a time where there are not really going to be any heroes, There's certainly no heroes on the battlefield because the battlefield is now conducted primarily by drones and by people sitting in offices manipulating technology from a distance, blowing things up. It's very different. But if you know who you are, even if what you are is not valued, and even if what you are is, I don't know, isn't current, doesn't work anymore, you have to know who you are or you will be destroyed. Psychically, you will be destroyed. You just get blown around by the wind, In my lifetime, I've never confronted anything like AI, but I've certainly seen fashions change. And particularly as a woman, I grew up in a time where women were supposed to marry and stay at home. And if you did go to work or you had to go out to work because there was no money or you were a single parent or whatever, you were basically either pitied or despised. You were certainly criticized. And not that much later in my life, a decade later, you were a fool if you stayed home. You were a person who, I don't know, was beaten up by men or, who had none of the appropriate values. These things change all the time. They're just fashions. When my mother was young, you were supposed to be heavy because you would have a little flesh on you if you got sick, so you had enough to lose, If you look at the pictures from the 1890s, the women were very robust. Now they're supposed to be very thin. I mean, it changes. It changes. And when you come to a question of belief or faith, which is very, very personal, and comes along with your own experience. When you're a kid, you're told what to believe. And sometimes there are people who continue with that throughout their life, but it could be very shallow. That belief system could be very shallow. It could be just what people told you. If you do this, I know people who lost their so-called faith in God because their house burned down, or they experienced a very bad reversal or tragedy. That's not faith to me. Faith endures, even if it goes against even if you have an idea that you're owed something because you believe, which I think that is a current thing. I'm a believer, so bad things can't happen to me, which of course is completely false. Bad things happen to everybody, believer or not believer. But I'm really just getting I'm asking you to examine what it is that you have your faith in. Because what's coming along now is really going to shake it. And I'm not quite sure how people are going to deal or make out, handle it. But I know that people who have a constancy in their nature, not necessarily believing that everything's going to be all right for them, but that they're part of a greater system, that there is some kind of order and decency and soul in the world. Do better. I mean, people who have meaning in their lives do better than people who don't. Do we make up meaning? Maybe we do. Maybe there is no meaning. Maybe it is random. I don't feel that personally. So should I accept what somebody else tells me? That it's all quantity, it's all materialistic, it's all what you can see and touch, it's all what you can accumulate. All I know from my observation of life is that people who seek only to accumulate have the same amount of problems as people who don't. They're not immune. They get treated a little better if they go to the hospital. Maybe you get a private room. But you can, and you are more protected from the perils, that's for sure. But you're not immune. So anyway, that's what I've been giving this a lot of thought. And when I say, what do people believe in? I mean, what do I believe in? What's the basis of my faith? What do I believe versus what other people tell me? Because when you read about AI and you realize that everybody's just collecting data all the time on everything, on every speech you give, on every talk you give, everything that's public, everything that's on the internet, everything that you've ever written that's been published, all that stuff is being fed into AI. All of it. And it's constantly looking for data. So if data is God, then what the hell are we? Anyway, I have no answers, only questions, but I urge you to think about it. And I'm going to make sounds now because for me, a lot of the answers lie in those sounds. Okay. Thank you for joining me today and being part of our community. I invite you to join us every Sunday at noon Eastern Time for the full live experience. Wishing you a wonderful week, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Visit greatoctave.com for more details about these webcasts, our newsletter, donations, and more.